Hemshech Chaim Beis, Volume 1. We're in the beginning of chapter 168, page 338. We're talking about the interface of Ak, but to understand Mamutz Da'ak, which is a klal, encompasses all of existence, all the world. Rabbi Rasha begins, Ha'inyan is to understand the world, because what's the relationship between Ak and existence? So by dissecting existence, we can understand, appreciate what Ak is. In other words, since we're looking for an interface between our existence and higher existence, the divine, and Ak serves as that interface, Klal and Prat, we have to really understand the nature of our existence. He says, he begins by saying that everything in existence is Tachas Hazman. It's governed by time. You can't have a world below Zman and Mokim. That is it's not incidental. The nature of existence is defined by time and space. And by Ilm Misalyanim we learned, Ilm is Biyad Uchrim, there, even though, I'm sorry, not even though. There, in the spiritual worlds, it's not physical space like our space here, but it's spiritual space. And to explain that, Efshe Sheyuvan, he explained it with the Likutei Torah, which we actually learned inside. So we can move from there. What does the Likutei Torah say? Sas Bir say. Sas is say. He brings three examples actually, but the Rebbe Rashav cites two of them. One that you have in one place, one physical place, the moyach, the mind, the brain. You have several things at work. You have, as he explained, the seichel, the idea, the concept, the rotzen, as he explains here in the footnote, in the parentheses, means the midas, the emotions that are defined by the intelligence. In other words, to go defy one, let's say a natural inclination would be not to put your foot into hot water, but if it's necessary for health, your mind will shape that will shape that desire, and then machshava is the thoughts exactly how to do it. The Yehudim with the Esis and Machshav. And all this is happening basically simultaneously. He doesn't mention simultaneously, but definitely in one area called the brain. And there are different faculties. Another example, in writing. What does Likutei Torah say about that? It says that there's four things going on. First of all, there's the intelligence, the idea. Secondly, there's the
desire to write.
Yeah, I think that's the third thing he says. But correct, there's the desire, the chukka to write. The third thing is, there I think that's the third. The second thing is the...
what I used to write it?
No, that's the fourth, that's the final thing, the midas. That's the chukka, 1 second. There's the seichel, there's the... there's the formulation of the letters. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
How to put it down in words,
and then there's finally the keich hasiyah, the power of a siyah. Can I give you the Likutei Torah a second? Because I wanted to see one thing. What did he call? He was a very interesting expression that he used there. Just a second. So what did he say back? Yeah, in these ages, the Haran Seichel Machshava Midas Maisa. So Machshava is the letters. The truth is, in order, it seems that the chukka would come before the Seichel, to be honest. Because you have the desire to express an idea. But let's say you have an idea, then comes the chukka. But he does, but then he later, I think he does say that he says,
okay, this is a different type of rotzen. This is a rotzen that's not higher than seichel. It's a rotzen that's lower.
Yeah, I understand. But he does say it after the formulation. Okay.
You could have an idea and think how to write it, but then I'm not motivated to write it, so it just stays in the
And the question is, why is that the order 3 should be 2? Okay, it's fine. The bottom line is, these are the 2 examples. The Likkutei Torah gives a third example with dibur, that when a person speaks, it's also that way. But doesn't use that, because this clearly is sufficient. And then now the Rebbe Rashab continues, Kol koyach yesh li mokim. So all of these faculties that are working together, let's say in the hand when you're writing, or in the brain when you're conceiving of an idea, right? They're all separate faculties that technically you could hypothetically see them being done in separate so-called locations. But however, they're not nitvis begeshem. That's the key. Because they're not like if you were talking about 4 items in a box. So 4 items in a box, they may be in the same box, but they're not in the same space in the box. Each occupies its particular location, because that's the definition of space, of Gashmizdika space. Remember, talking here about Mokim, not even Zman right now. And so, but here, since they each have a particular personality, you can't compare, for example, the intelligence to the tshuka, to the desire to think, to conceive, or the desire to write. You can compare that to the actual thinking about the actual letters. And you can compare that to the power of actually the ability to put it into words, meaning the koyach hasiyah, the action, which also requires, because you can have all 3 of them and not have that last step of a person simply having fingers that know how to write letters. So there are 4 different functions going on here, and yet because they're not nitvus begeshem, that's the key. They're not nitvus begeshem. They're not.
The fourth one is the actual asiyah. That's in the hand.
But it's also not nitvus begeshem. We're not talking about they're all in the hand. They're all happening while you're doing the writing. Kechasi doesn't mean the actual hand. He means the movement, the action part of it. In other words, if you have all the other 3, you could be sitting with a pen, and you have the idea, you have the tshuka, and you have even the letters, and then there's the actual.
Or the hand is paralyzed.
Or the hand isn't moving yet. Yeah. Bottom line is all 4 functions. However, they're not nitvus begeshem. Since they're not nitvus begeshem, let's define what that means. Not like a physical object that actually occupies physical space. Therefore, that's where they all can occupy. They all can be in one space. He's giving, like he says there in the Torah, simply a way for us to visualize, like he explains there, all the spiritual worlds and all the levels, the thousands and multitude of levels, all happening in the same space, so to speak, in our concept of space.
Same space meaning everywhere simultaneously.
Yeah. Look, in other words, he's trying to explain to people like ourselves that understand space as in terms of one thing separated from another, how things, like he said there, these are 4 steps, but in truth there's millions of steps, or whatever the amount of steps that are all happening, and the same concept applies. If 4 steps can happen in one so-called area, then a million things can happen in one
area. It's everywhere.
Fine, but I mean to say, we're talking, like in our case, it's in the mayach, or it's in the yad. That's what he means to say. In other words, we're not talking completely out of space. Out of space, then that's a whole different dimension. The question he asked Likkutei Torah was, how do we explain the seichel, all these thousands of levels of tzimtzumim and elamis, in context that we can understand? Look, it's the beginning of the process. To understand the Ma'alim Amokim completely is going to be, as we learned, almost impossible. To understand it doesn't mean you can't have an intuition about it. You could through process of elimination. But, for example, let's just say when we talk about neshamas, that thing I always tell people: where does the soul go to after 120 years? The answer is, what kind of question is that? We're assuming that we're where it's at, so where does the soul go to? The soul goes back to, like electricity, goes back to its natural place. Where's electricity? He doesn't use this example, I'm using this example. Where's electricity? Or when there are 100 cell phones in one room, where are the waves? The answer is, there you could probably say the waves are not literally in the same place, but they probably are, because they occupy different type. They're not nitfis begeshem. So you could have light waves and sound waves right now. If you turn on a radio, you can just change the channel and you're going to have 100 different channels coming in to the same radio. Clearly tells you that there are forces that are not as tangible. To say they're completely not occupy space, you can't say that. That's the same thing here. So if you just go a little other frequency, another frequency is the spiritual frequency. So soul can be here, it's just on a different dimension. And you can have millions of souls. When I say here, I mean here on this table. It means in our reality. That's how I would define it. In other words, when we say neshamas come, let's say to a chuppah, or neshamas are with us. Question, we're not talking about the Gili now. We're talking about that they exist. So it means just because they don't occupy physical space doesn't mean they don't occupy space. They just occupy spiritual space. That's why I understand what he's saying here, because he's just talking about worlds. He says clearly, Elam Ruchnim have Makam Ruchni. They don't have Makam Gashmi. They don't have physical space, but they have spiritual space. So we are talking about the world of space, but we're not talking about physical space.
It's the same thing, just more compressed. I mean, it's like...
No, nitfis begeshem is the key thing, not more compressed. More compressed is a smaller level.
No, because Kutu Neshamas occupy...
No. But for example, the light waves or air waves are not more compressed. More compressed would be if I could only fit 4 sardines in a can. I squeeze them more, I can fit thousands of sardines. But when it comes to light waves or air waves, it's not just compressed. They're made of a different, I would say, much more sublime form of presence. They're a different world. And you wouldn't say you can compress that many in one place, because they're not in the same category. It's true that they also have parameters. But you begin with a different premise. Just like ideas in the brain are not like sardines in a can. That's what I'm trying to say. So it's not just smaller physical objects. It's made of a more sublime thing. I think when it talks real ruchnius, it's far more sublime, a neshama or the elamus. But I'm giving an example. Like he doesn't use this example because Chassidus doesn't bring examples of electricity or light waves or air waves. But those examples clearly work. Because because we have them, we know today they exist. And you could have, technically, like I just said, you have one box radio, and so your child will ask you, 1 second, something's streaming into it. Fine, so I have 1 channel, 2 channels. How many channels can stream? You could say, really? Thousands of channels can stream in. It's just a matter of you being able to receive them. So you clearly see that there's another form of, let's call it energy, that just does not take physical, does not have physical properties. It has other properties. And then you go deep. Then I would say a deeper level. That's still physical. Electricity and airwaves are still physical in some way because you can hear them, you can't see them. They don't occupy space quite the same way. But technically speaking, there's bandwidth. For example, there is ultimately a limit. I would think that you cannot have, but it's a good example. Look. We're trying to get out of Gashmisdika thinking here. It's an example to move from Grobe Gashmis, the Likutei Torah's example is basically the Karav el HaSeichel. That's what he's saying there. It's trying to take away the gross thinking of things in terms of, you're here, I'm here, we can't be in the same place. So he has examples where something can be in the same place. In our same place. In our brain, you can have all these things working together. And when you write, you have all these things working in one function, let's put it this way. I have no other way to put it. But the point is he's not trying to say that if you open up the fingers you're going to find seichel and machshava and shukah. That's not the point. The point is that we can relate to 4 functions working in one area, which in Gashmis
4 functions working simultaneously.
In one place. It's in the writing. It's in the same place. You're writing letters. When you're writing them, 4 things are happening. Where in the physical world, 4 things would have to occupy 4 different sections. Here, 4 things don't have to occupy 4 sections. I'm giving an example of electricity or airwaves or sound waves or light waves, because that too helps us get beyond the physical. I would say that there's three levels. There's physical space, real physical. There's everything that technology today. That would be light waves, air waves, even the invisible ones like ultraviolet, infrared, X-ray. You know, X-ray. What happens in X-ray when you buy an X-ray? Suddenly it's able to go through and see your bones. What does that mean? And now you don't even see what's going on. All it is a ray that no one can see. Clearly, it's there. How many X-rays are right now? What? Right now, if someone asked you in this room, how many energies are here? The answer would be, it could be billions. We have no clue how many, because they're all here. The fact is that you can actually receive it. The point is, we're not talking here lamaila completely, above space and time, because we are accepting it. If a radio or a computer or a television is receiving it, it means that in your little box of your radio, you're receiving transmissions. Those transmissions, however, don't occupy space quite the physical way, like physical things do. And then I would say neshamis or ilmis, neshamis, simtsumim, all these things, that's even more sublime, because then you're dealing with the real spiritual. So I would say technology is almost like an interface between the spiritual and the physical. It's something in the physical world that gives us a taste of what spiritual time and space may be like. I'm telling you right now, this is not going to come easy. It's going to take time to think like this, because it's getting away from our conventional thinking is about things in very tangible terms. This requires a little abstract thinking.
For example, it says Beis Hamikdash l'mayla connected to Beis Hamikdash l'mata. So in other words, there is some sort of space, because it says mechuven. It's not above Australia, but it's above.
Yeah, remember what we spoke in time. The Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. That Tikkun Chatzos is Man Krishma, is Man Yontif.
Right.
And you see how complicated it gets, because you are saying Shabbos begins 8:02, not 8:05, and not 7 o'clock in New York, let's say. So 8:02 is our tangible time, and yet there's something a ruchnisdika thing that's why you need to explain that there must be ruchnisdika time. The ruchnisdika time doesn't occupy time like we do, but by us when it strikes 8:02, in some way that ruchnisdika energy is beginning to manifest. But you see, by us it's called beginning. There, it's not called beginning. There would be like, let's say, the Eid of Malchus. Like I spoke about Chesed and Gvura. Chesed and Gvura can simultaneously are here right now with us. But today is what? Tuesday. Today is the day of Tiferes. Let's just say today is an energy of Tiferes. Where's Chesed and Gvura? The answer is Chesed and Gvura are always here, so to speak. However, it's not their day, so to speak. So what does that mean? That in our physical, what we call Tuesday, is Ruchnis is called Tiferes. Now, what's hard to understand is by us it would make sense. Like, you know what? Okay, so there's a Sunday above and there's a Monday above. No, there's a Chesed above. So by us, Lamaila Mokim is Chesed and Gvura. Lamata, it's Sunday and Monday. The problem is we're so trapped in our Sunday and Monday, yesterday and today, that we can't understand how Chesed and Gvura is not yesterday and today. But you have to train yourself to think of it as a bunch of levels. That's it. If you took the 6,000 years, which is what we're discussing now, and spread it out. Let's make believe 6,000 years were 6,000 sardines, just for the record. With each one having a bunch of multi-layers. 6,000 years, each year has days have hours have seconds. That's, for argument's sake, it's billions of little pieces. Think of it that way. Billions of little pieces. In our world, pieces mean physical space and time. Today, tomorrow, higher, lower, everything we talked about. This parameter, that parameter. If someone were to tell you, forget about time and space as you know it. 6 billion, these billions of pieces are billions of energy that are there all the time, simultaneously. It's hard for us to imagine that, because we don't understand time and space that way. But if you look at Atzilus, or actually we're going to go to Ak, what you're going to see is all these pieces are just forms of energy that's what defines distinction. Their distinction is not defined by physical parameters, it's defined by spiritual parameters. Which technically means they're all happening at the same time, the same place, but they're really not. Because in spiritual time and place, they're happening in different time and place, except time and place is not defined there as yesterday and tomorrow. Their time and place is defined by the levels. I mean, I'm giving a little preview of what we're learning here, but that's really what it's going to come down to understanding. This is extremely hard to first swallow. I'm telling you, it's hard. Even when I say it, and I've thought about this many times and learned about it, it's continuously hard to swallow because we are so trapped in physical time and space. But this is what we're doing. But you can see you can start getting a sense at least. You'll see it's going to be hard because I tell you we're trapped with our way of thinking. But you could begin to get a sense. That's why I wanted to learn the Likkutei Torah inside, because you really want to see the exact language, because that's what he's doing, trying to train us to think of something in Ruchnius. Time is harder to understand than space. Space, you could, for example, not difficult to understand that Gvura in Atzilus is Eish, fire down below. And exactly that. It's not an example for fire. There's no fire in spiritual world. What's fire? Fire is Gvura. Fire, the properties of withholding, the properties of din. When you add let's call it a physical wrapping and packaging, it looks like fire. Who adds that? That God adds. Atzilus Ruchnis can't become Gashmis. You need a higher force that's higher than spiritual and higher material to make a material package for a spiritual energy. Fine. But that being said, it's not inconceivable to relate to a spiritual archetype that becomes a physical manifestation when it takes on physical properties. In time, it's going to be more complicated, because Sunday in Atzilus is happening also on Monday, in our Monday. But for Atzilus, that's Sunday. Chesed is Sunday, and that's it. That's the energy of Sunday. So when you talk Sunday to Monday, it's not about time moving, from here to there. It's simply moving from one level to the next level. And that is the root of how we understand physical time. So physical time is a package, just like physical space is a package to spiritual energy, basically. It takes you for a good loop, right? To make you really think. Look, this is how you start thinking about Elokus in a way that's a little more edel. The bottom line is to get us to stop thinking in gross or coarse ways that we think.
I envision like a picture, like a drawing that they have all a bunch of letters, and then like the Tanya, somebody draws the whole thing, and then there's a picture that comes out of it. It's all really letters, but you're taking is doing the opposite of what you want to do. You're taking more dominant.
You're taking the sardines. You're trying to do is use Gashmi's way of you're just squeezing more physical things together. That's what you're saying. Some of them are
more revealed. I'm saying they're all the same. It's all the same, but some of it is more revealed.
What I would give a better example.
So Sunday Chesed will be revealed than you said.
I would give a better example than yours. You know what example I would give is you look at a painting, and by studying it, you suddenly have a feeling, a sensation. You feel almost like what the artist was thinking when he made it. And you can't see that in the painting. It's just it's the energy of the painting, so to speak. It's the message. That's to me an example, because that's a ruchnistic thing in a physical item. It's more than it's like when you hear music. You're not just hearing the sounds. You're hearing a message, a story, or something like that. Look, if you try to force it into Gashmizdika examples, you're going to defeat the purpose. You want physical examples, but you want physical examples that lift us up, not that bring it down. You don't want to have an example of saying, you know what, all the neshamas and all the worlds are here right now because we simply know how to compress them into like sardines in a container. You want to really understand that there's a thing called a spiritual entity, and the spiritual entity occupies time and space different than physical entity does. That's what you really want to get to. That's the goal. To get to that, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but that's what you want to do. You want to understand how does a spiritual entity, what are its properties? What defines the properties of a spiritual entity? Let's say a soul. A soul. It's a good, by the way, our soul is outside of our body. We all know that a soul is not confined. Yet, God forces it inside the body, and as long as it's with you, it will always remain in your body and not outside of it. And yet we say, Chassidus says that Chai and Yechida don't really manifest in the body. They remain above. So when we, for example, feel love for another person, which is a big chiddush, how could an entity, this table does not, at least in our knowledge, does not feel for this wall. It wouldn't even make sense. It lives in its space and doesn't have a relationship with another space unless somebody brings them together. Yet we are self-contained individuals and we can love another person. You can love a child, you can love another friend, a spouse, and so on. Love is transcending the parameters of time and space because you're loving something outside of you. You connect to it. You can even feel it. Say mothers feel, their children even from a distance, and so on. What does that mean? It's not a miracle. It means that there is some type of spiritual presence that also is contained within us, but it's not completely confined by us. So when we said the examples that he used here, that the four things are functioning at the same time when you write, what the Alter Rebbe is doing there is trying to explain how the same action, the same function, has four different functions, all taking place in the same, he doesn't actually say moment, in the same place. That's what he's saying. So when the brain is conceiving of an idea, you have conceiving of an idea, you have the desire to do so. Well, actually not the desire. Here the Ratzon, I'm sorry. There the Ratzon is the effect that it has on your desire, that you should want to do something, even if it goes against, let's say, your nature. And then there's the actual implementing it. How? The hirhure, the esis. And so how are you going to do it? All happening in the same space of your brain as you conceive something. So it's giving us an example how there are spiritual forces at work in the same space that we would call the same space, and yet they each are of their own spiritual space. So when you have Avos Yisro and you have Avos Achim, people sitting together, their physical bodies are sitting in different chairs, but their souls are connected. We say this all the time. What does that mean? What does that mean in scientific terms? It means that their souls also occupy space, but their souls are not nitfas, they're not contained, limited by physical space. So they can transcend space and we can feel for each other and be united as one, ki ish echad b'leiv echad, even though we are separate bodies. So we say this all the time, but what does it mean in terms, it doesn't mean that we've gone outside of time and space period. No, we've gone into spiritual space, and spiritual space does not contradict one object from another. In physical space, two of us can't sit in the same chair. In physical space, if I give you food, I have less. If I give you money, I have less. In spiritual space, two people can be in the same physical space, essentially, because they're not spiritual entities are not limited by time and space as we know it. Now, when you really relate to this, you can say that the idea that the Baal Shem Tov or other tzaddikim or rabbeim were able to, what we call, go back in time and connect to a neshama that existed in a body, let's say 1,000 years ago, becomes not such an impossible, it's not just a miracle. If someone lives on that plane, why not? That plane is not defined by physical time and space. Just because we are limited here into this Tuesday, this day in this part of the world.
You mean like him learning with Achiyash learning? Or something like that?
No, or connecting, or as if they were able to connect, and so on. I mean, conceptually, why that should be possible. Someone can enter Machshava Gduma Da'ak. Now, to enter, obviously, you cannot be bound by your own physicality. But if you could enter, it's not, in other words, not an inconceivable concept. You could conceive it. We can't do it, but we can conceive its possibility. As I said, even when I say it still requires constant effort, because it just shows us how magushim we are. The fact is, we continuously think in terms of here and now as here and now. That's our lives. But there's no question that we're able to transcend it, and there are examples. I mean, I guess the more you learn it, the more examples you have, the more you keep thinking about it, the easier it becomes to relate to. That's the bottom line. Yeah.
The truth is, there have been studies that anybody can do it. There's great books where they did double-blind studies in MIT, even Maimonides Hospital, to try to keep up with this. The Russians during the Cold War, and they found that anybody could locate objects. Anybody has the ability to transcend these barriers.
Okay, yeah, fine. I mean,
Jew, Gentile, anybody off the street, they just lined up people. Just boom, boom, I can show you the books.
Let's continue. We're going to have plenty to discuss about this. Okay. Now, after giving the Likutei Torah, saying that maybe that can help, he said, Efsher Sheyuvan. It's interesting that the Rebbe Rashab says Efshe Sheyuvan. Why Efshe Sheyuvan? Isn't that exactly what the Likkutei Torah is coming to explain? That there's Mokum Ruchni and Mokum Gashmi. So the Likkutei Torah itself says L'karav el HaSeichel. So why is he saying Efshe Sheyuvan? So clear. It could be, yeah. Because he doesn't speak specifically, begins to speak about Mokum Gashmi, Mokum Ruchni. Huh? Okay. Yeah.
6 lines down.
So now we continue. After explaining this Likkutei Torah, bringing the Likkutei Torah, now he goes V'ikar inyan hamokim. V'ikar inyan hamokim, and the primary inyan of mokim, the primary, I guess, concept or role of space, hu b'maylo madrega, is in its quality and in its level. The Mailas Hadavar Zeu Mekayim Shel Hadavar. So now he's going and explaining what Mokim means, Mokim Ruchni. That the Mailas Hadavar, that's the Mekayim. What means when you say something's what do I want to say? Here Mekayim Shel Hadavar means what's the word I'm looking for in English?
Place. That's its place.
Mekayim Shel Hadavar means that's its place, but there's another word it occupies the place it occupies. So when we say place it occupies physically, you could say, okay, it's sitting in the north, in the east, in the west, the south, on top, on the bottom, at the corner. In Ruchnius, or the real meaning of Mokim is not where it sits, but what quality it has, and what Mailas Hadavar, the quality of the thing, that is its place. So when someone says, for example, person is Makares Mekayim, what does that mean? Someone's not Makares Mekayim. Means you have let's say a few scholars sitting, and some Shmendrik pops in, and he begins to pontificate like he's a ganzer scholar. Now he's physically in the same room with them. He may be taller than them. He may even be older than them. That's all physical. He's not Makas Mekayim. He's not recognizing his space. He's not recognizing his place. What are you doing? You're a little kid. You're sitting in the presence of giants. What does Mekayim here mean? Completely nothing to do with physical. Not Makas Mekayim. You don't belong here because it's not your club, or you don't belong because it's not your shul. You don't belong. This is the people's the level that the people are on is not your level, and recognizing that is a true thing. That's what Makas Mekayim. I think it's and they use the word Mekayim, very clear. Why are you smiling?
It's very true.
Yeah, a lot of people are not Makas Mekayim. No, that's a good example. So Mekayim you see here does not mean physical place. Because I could say actually a person who's not Makas Mekayim, what does he think? Just because you were let in doesn't mean suddenly you're on that level. He thinks just because I'm here, you're not on the level. In the Beis Hamikdash there were the 15 steps, which correspond to the 15 Shir HaMailas. What does it say? You couldn't go up a step without singing a song. Why? I can walk up steps. I have feet. I walk up steps. No. Because in Ruchnius, you have to earn your right to walk up a step. Walking up a step is not just because you have feet and you have the power. You're not in that Malkim. You don't belong there. You need to earn your right to go to another level. So suddenly space here clearly means levels. A level. And if you're not in that level, you're not in that space. You can't fake it. Unfortunately, we live in a material world where many people who are in power and control, because they have a lot of money, or they have a lot of power, or they have a lot of arrogance. So it seems like they're in a higher level. And people who are truly in a higher level can be stepped on in our world. That just shows you the distortion of Malkam Gashmi compared to Malkam Ruchni. If this world was aligned with the way it's supposed to be, a person who's on a higher stature would have higher respect. And a person on a lower stature would have lower respect even if he has more material possessions. Just to show you the distortion of our world. So in a way you could say there's a clear distortion between Malkam Gashmi and Malkam Ruchni. But when in a world that's a perfect world, why were Gan Eden? Why were Adam and Chava expelled from Gan Eden? It wasn't a punishment; it was cause and effect. They were no longer in Gan Eden level energy after the Chet Eitzadas. Why the Kohen Gadol, when he goes to the Holy of Holies and he has one blemish, can't live? Not a punishment. That place is no longer the blemish and Holy of Holies don't work together. It's not Mekayme. It's not his level anymore. If you're pure, it's your level. Not just a incidental punishment. I'm just giving examples how Mokim becomes a level, a quality. It's defined by quality, not by quantity, basically. It's defined by a state of being as opposed to a physical parameters.
Well, as opposed to being in a state.
Yeah, that's good. It's a state of being instead of being in a state. Yeah, good. We're coining. If Eliezer Gold was here, I guarantee it would have been written in his what's that book called? His
No, it's a journal.
He's
Somebody writes it sometimes in the margins too.
Yeah. No, I mean he's got all those lines. I don't know what he's doing with them. If I know him, he's probably patenting them all. You're gonna have to sue. Class action suit. When money is made, we'll worry about it. Okay, so even the quality of a thing, that is its place, not the quantity. Size doesn't matter.
It's like with Kalim, we start off with quantity and then we go all the way up.
Yeah, we learned before, Eir is quality, Keli is quantity, in the general sense. Yeah.
Until we get to Yoris.
So we say, a person of quality is a person of stature. When the Rebbe spoke that Sikha, I remember Yud Aleph Nissen, it was unbelievable. That first talk, Sikha, is on televised. It was Yud Aleph Nissen, what year? Memhei maybe. And the Rebbe began that, generally speaking, what was the Rebbe said? The Rebbe said, Gaiva, arrogance and yeshus is not considered a virtue in Yiddishkeit. He spoke about Amalek. So why are so many people gathering together for the birthday of one individual? So the Rebbe began the Farbrengen. It seems like inappropriate. And people bothering people to come from all over to come to one person's. And the Rebbe answered that he told the story of this rabbi that was hired. A big city was hiring a Nurav, and they were looking they found someone that had really good credentials. He had only one downside. He was very short, physically short. So they had a debate what to do, because there's a certain stature, you just get up there. The Rebbe didn't say it, but you want to be able to see him over the lectern, things like that. The bottom line is they did hire him. So one person who had who had certain misgivings about it came to him and said, "But Farti is your short man." So he said, "The person may be small, but the benkel is grace. The chair is big."
See that he occupies.
In other words, it's nothing to do with the person. So whatever we're saying is that the celebration of this coming together is not for an individual. It's for the Rebbe said for the generations of Chabad. The Rebbe said it clear. It was like an open sikha, very direct. It was very very rare the Rebbe speaks so openly. But the point there again is the thing has nothing to do with size. It has to do with quality. That's all I'm saying. Ma'ila, mokim. I don't know. It just came to me. There's a lashon in Pirkei Avos. So there's a very nice Mishnah. What does it say there? That everything has its man and everything has its makom, right? What's the lashon in Pirkei Avos? You know the part lashon? Ein lecha davar she'ein lei makom. You familiar with the lashon? Right. It's one of the Mishnahs in Pirkei Avos. There's three things there. Ein lecha davar she'ein lei the hakol something or other. You can look it up. Let's see. Okay. Bottom line, it says there's nothing that does not have a makom. So what means there's nothing that doesn't have a place? It doesn't mean physically everything has a place where to sit or where to live or reside. It means everything has tfisa. Everything has some quality, has some value. The ein dover bottle. And nothing is worthless. There's no such thing as something that's worthless in God's world. In Beloshen Yiddish, es ist etwas azach und hat aber treff. It's something of a thing, and it has value. V'zeh mekemeh, and that's its place. Epes Azach, or not a bitref. No, that's the way that Rabbeim may have written it. Yeah, you could say bitref. Yeah, batref you say usually, but bitref, yeah, it works. Maybe it's pronounced batref, but I'm sure this is the way that Rebbe Rashab wrote it. Yiddish makes it a little geschmacker. How can I explain? I can't even explain what the Yiddish adds, but it definitely gives azachot batref. It's epes azach. It's epes azach. I remember in a sikha the Rebbe spoke in the 1968. He spoke about World War II. So he spoke about that World War II was one of the most bizarre wars because it wasn't a war based on no, it was territory. No, it was bizarre that the Rebbe said the person who started it, he was referring to Yamach Shemai, Hitler, didn't like rise to power in a normal way. It's not like he was a president and then became a leader. The Rebbe added, when he edited it, he wrote a gornit, a nobody. Yeah. He was a nobody. It wasn't like he came from children of kings or something. A nobody. I don't know. The Rebbe wanted to show that the war was completely, like some type of spiritual thing, so to speak, or not to say that God. But the point is that
he won an election.
But the Rebbe wrote, yes, I understand, but who? It would be like a nobody coming from nowhere.
We have something like that. The same thing.
We have something like that now in the United States.
A nobody. He was a nobody. But the point I want to say, a nobody is like so no mokim. Fine. You found it yet? Huh? Yeah, no, fine. Okay, so therefore, now we have the point like this. Two things were stated about mokim ruchni. One is that it's not nitfis begeshem, it's not defined by physical properties. And I said before, an example for that would be, the example Kutateta is the different faculties at work, or different faculties at work in one function. The example that would be a little easier maybe for this generation to understand is technology. The idea that you could have one radio, one box, one mobile phone, and how many force energies can stream into it? Mm-hmm. How many channels? How many ideas? It's not even the number. The point is what space do they occupy? And the answer is that they're not defined by the same way physical space is defined. The only thing I qualify by saying that's an example because it's still physical. It's not quite. I would compare to the Atzilus, Bria, Tzirasiya, and the Shamas, and so on, and the Tzimtzumim. But it's definitely an example that helps us relate to space that's beyond physical space. It's probably not, because at the end of the day, there's limits. First of all, there's a limit. It has to occupy something, and you can't have infinite amount of. But it could be in spiritual worlds. You also can't have infinite. It's a good question. I would tend to think that technology is the spiritual within the material, and like the neshamas and worlds are probably more the spiritual within spiritual. It's a little more spiritual. That would be my inclination. I'm almost sure that's what it's like. Is it asiyah ruchnis? I would say it's the ruchnis and gashmis, but you see, it's definitely ethereal, it's definitely untangible, it's definitely unmeasurable in this regular ways, and it doesn't occupy space as we know it. If you had told somebody 500 years ago, whenever, that there's such a thing possible, they would think you're crazy. That you could have in one space literally millions of streams of energy. It makes sense. Physical space doesn't allow for that. In our understanding. What's the lashon? So pick over his Perek Daled. Okay. Al tihi baz l'chol adam. Do not dismiss any person. Ve'al tihi maflig l'chol davar. And don't exaggerate.
Yeah.
Yeah. She'en l'cha adam she'en le'shah. There's no person that does not have his hour. Ve'en l'cha davar she'en le'makim. There's nothing that doesn't have his space. The question is, why does it say al tihi muflig? The cheder is the opposite from with the. The she'ein should say that. In other words, there's an element here is also a limitation, I guess. I think tav teti maflig l'chol davar may mean the opposite. Do not exaggerate its insignificance, maybe.
Why?
Do not underestimate it, because then he says she'en l'chadim she'en le'shav en l'chadavar she'en le'makim. So what's the esfir?
So it means if
everything has place, what? You mean to say it doesn't have more than its place? Okay, maybe, yeah, could be.
Not more than its place.
Yeah. So do not. I'll take boz l'choladim, which means do not dismiss, do not embarrass. Yeah.
Don't lower.
Don't lower and don't exaggerate, because everything has. Okay, it's interesting. But the point here that he wants to bring out, I think, yeah. Everything has its season. But remember, we're still talking about place. He didn't get the time back. He's going to go back to time. Time is going to be far more complicated. Because imagine thinking the same way about time now. Space, okay, fine, we understand there's physical space, there's spiritual space, there's more spiritual space. But time, like, what does it mean? Yesterday, today.
We always said, like, we always use the word proceeds, meaning a higher level, before the symptom, and before this. But we have a glimpse of it, probably.
Yeah. Well, let's continue there. So two things about spiritual space now. It not nitfas begeshem. It's not man. It does not contain by physical parameters. And two, it means quality. It's interesting. Both points, they're different points, but they're interdependent, right? Yeah, because you could say something has physical manifestation, but it's still defined by quality. Yeah, both are necessary. Both are necessary. You see the point here? Because you could say, like when I say "Ein makaris mekeme," I'm occupying a seat in the room. Just because I'm not recognizing the people that are there, and I'm arrogant. I'm using myself as a guinea pig here, kosher guinea pig. But I'm physically there, and nevertheless, real space is recognizing the quality of the level you're at. But there's another thing in spiritual space that it's not just the quality, it also is not. Yeah, it's habataya, because the quality of something is not defined by physical parameters. That's the bottom line. Quality is not defined that way. It makes no difference how tall or short, how old or young. Quality is quality. So you say someone's wiser, someone's more scholarly, they're on a higher level. Their mokum is mokum naila. That's the key. And that's not a physical thing. Okay. For Yuvin's you see the Rebbe Rashab is and we'll understand this increasingly more. Yuvin's Yesa will understand this will better understand this Mehedet Tfisas Mokim. Oh, this is similar to what I was just saying about Makas Mekeme. We'll understand it from the opposite. Hedet Tfisas Mokim. When something does not have value, something is not. How would you translate Tfisas? Hedet Tfisas Mokim. No, but he's saying the cotton gadol. When something is nullified, insignificant. Yeah, we'll understand this better from an element of insignificance.
Because insignificancy is like non-space.
That's what he's going to say in quality, not in quantity. In physical, it wouldn't be that way. So he says, yeah, so we'll understand this better with the concept of insignificance. Something that does not have value. Not that it does not occupy physical space. Like the insignificance of a young person compared to a mature person. Katan doesn't mean necessarily an age. He means a small person compared to a big person, great person. Small person in stature compared to a great person in stature. That person, when you're in the presence of greatness, that person doesn't feel significant. If it's not a typhus mokum latzmi, it feels like I'm insignificant. He loses himself in Yiddish. he has by himself no value and no came
No worth.
Vert is worth, no worth and no value. Yeah.
No impact.
No. It doesn't. No, impact is not that word. Vert is worth and betref is value. I mean, you could say worth is importance, but that's the whole thing about it. Yeah, it doesn't feel any importance, significance. What's the reason for it? Because this individual, the smaller person in stature, does not find in himself any quality and erech and commonality or commensurate whatever proportionate relationship compared to the Gadol, in comparison to the greater person.
So it's not a third person looking at him, it's himself looking at him, it's like a bittul.
Yeah, he's giving an example of, let's say, a smaller person in the presence of a greater person. Yeah. Presence of a Rebbe. Let's talk about really great. I'm not just talking about two relatively, let's say, a real difference.
Who better than a Rebbe would know this?
Al-Kain ain't a toughest mokum la'atzmei. Yeah, because the Rebbe is looking at himself compared to those greater than him. The Rebbe is not looking down; he's looking up. That's why he does not have any teifus. He's not in a teifus mokum la'atzmei. He does not feel any significance. Basically, he doesn't feel he has any space. That's the word teifus mokum. He's using the word mokum, but teifus mokum here doesn't mean that he has no physical space. It means that he doesn't feel any significance. And same thing is betfisas mokim, when something has significance, value, which is milas hadover. That's referring to the quality of the thing, the betref, the quality, the value. That's its significance. So to understand better the idea that space is not about physical space, but it's about quality and value, its status, in other words, its state of being, he used the example of someone who doesn't feel any value or significance in the presence of something greater. So just like headed tfisas makom, now we understand what tfisas makom is. What means when a person does feel significant? It means that there's value. That's the tfisas makom. That's what means tfisas makom. The intention here in this is not from the perspective of the other, of the greater person. It's not like Shazam Mele Shetevus Mokim Gabe Zulose.
He's qualifying and saying that this is.
Yeah. He's qualifying and saying Tfisas Mokim doesn't mean the eyes of the other. Because that's automatic. That you exist, and therefore you have value. But is he talking about a gadol here, or is he talking about someone that does have tvisas
No,
makim?
he's talking about the same thing that he was saying before. He's just like a bunch of
What
things.
about
Like a kavana shetevus makim ba'atzmei mitzad me'losh zeo ha'mokim shalei.
Imak Shemai?
One second. Only the intention here is that he has significance in his own eyes, ba'atzmei, in himself, because of his quality, because that's his space. I don't know why he's adding this piece.
Yeah, because Imak Shemai would have a great feeling of.
Hold on a second. One second. I think one second. Remember, he came to explain value by first explaining by he says you've been through insignificance. But when it comes to cotton and gadol, maybe this line would not be fitting, because you say, but the gadol looks at the cotton, he's talking not tefes makim. Not just the cotton is not tefes makim, the gadol also sees him as not tefes. Whereas when you do have quality, the other person, it's not about the other person looking at you, it's about you yourself. But why would he add this? What does this line add? Is it just a qualification in general, or does it add something in Havana to what we're discussing?
Go back to the Kumeken. That line is very key. Kumeken with Tfisas Makim Shu minus Adavar, the Shed with Tfisas Makim Shaloi.
Yeah, I understand.
He's trying to.
No, because the cotton and gadol.
But why is it relevant to know where the other person looks at you? Who cares?
The cotton and gadol was not a mashal for tfisas makim. It was a mashal for headed tfisas makim.
Right.
Now we're coming back to the.
Okay, so why is it important? Why is it important to know that the other person does see you? Oh, I think I know why. Okay, I think I know why. I'll tell you why he's saying it. With the Katan and Gadol, this may not apply, but that's irrelevant here to the point. What I think he's saying is like this. He wants to say that this isn't just a subjective thing. You could say, you know what? This is an objective thing. In other words, when you have quality, you are by nature you have tefes mokim. You have value.
It's for real.
It's not about whether the other person sees you that way or not. It really makes no difference. Who cares how they see you?
It's not
in other words,
relative.
it's almost like a psychological lesson in projection. It says the Maraglim, what do they say? Hayinu beinenu. Right. What does that mean? We saw ourselves as insects, chagovim, as like grasshoppers or insects, and that's how they saw us. The question is asked: what do you mean? They were 20 feet tall, 10 feet tall. You were small. So it's objective reality. Why did you say we saw ourselves and that's how they saw us? It should have said that's how we were, or that's how they saw us. So the answer is given because how you see yourself, that's how others look at you. If you see yourself as small, others are going to look at you as small.
So like existential.
Yeah, psychological in other words. So he's saying here, this isn't about tefisas mokim because the other person values you or not. It makes no difference. Like we said from the Mishnah, ein dover she'en le mokim. She'en le mokim. In other words, this is actually definition of space. Because if it was dependent on someone else, then it's just a matter of subjectivity. I think you're significant. Okay, so great. If you're not, you're not. That mokim ruchni is actually an independent, objective reality. If you have quality, you have value in your own eyes, and that's that. I think that's what he's.
So you can have value, but still be bittul at the same time, like Moshe Rabbeinu.
That's a separate discussion. That's not relevant to our discussion here. The point of the matter is that number one is, like he said in the Mishnah, everyone has value. He was just giving an example. He wants to explain how mokim is not a physical thing. So you can explain it from the negative. When someone who's small or someone who's humble in front of a greater person doesn't feel any value. There too, it's not because the other person doesn't look at you as they look at you and dismiss you, because in truth, is your mokim is compared to them does not have value. And the same thing the opposite. When you do have value, it's not because the other person sees you. That's natural. Of course, you have value, quality because you're there. The point is that in your eyes, in other words, mokim and maila are one. That's the bottom line. And it's not about how people see you. It's about actually the definition of your place in this world, your status. That's the point.
The Katan the Gadol, he says, "Any tefes mokim la'atzmai." He doesn't have milas. He just in his eyes.
Yeah. I understand. But regarding mokim, it's an example how mokim is
His mind is pale in comparison to the Gadol.
We're not saying he doesn't exist. He wants to just explain the word mokim as maila. That's how to understand better the idea of mokim.
After he says kamay kain, like kamay kain is like a separate thing.
No, it's not kamay kain. He said v'yuven zeh b'yeser. To understand what means mokim is maila, will understand it from the negative by saying someone that doesn't feel quality and value. The same thing is that from that we can extrapolate. That this means that when you do have quality, space means quality basically. Tfisas mokim or headed tfisas mokim is all in quality. That's the bottom line. It's not.
It also has quality, but compared to the Gadol, he feels that it's like a.
If he doesn't have it, he lost it.
No, if meaning that it pales in comparison to the Gadol.
No, first of all, your qualification, even though it may be true, it's not what he's saying here.
I've read it twice or three times.
What do you mean? Erhat bei sich kein Wert.
Bazir, that's what he's trying to say. Bazir.
What?
In his own eyes, he does have, compared to like somebody who's smaller than him. Of course.
Why would he want to say this? Why is this important to mention that he has? He wants to bring out that he doesn't have. So why would you? What you're saying is true in concept, but why is it relevant to this maimer? Here he wants to speak about how what mokim is milo or not milo. That's the key. That's what he wants to say here. Anyway, v'zeu in hamokim.
A few times he keeps on using the word ba'atzmai. She'ena meitze ba'atzmai shumayla. Akain any type of mokim la'atzmai. If I live zich, like 3 or 4 times before they also say.
Why go off on the theme? Why you're talking about other things that are not relevant. The discussion here, all that matters here, is that space is quality, not physical space. That's all that matters here. Look, it's obvious. The Mishnah says, "En l'chodov v'she'en le'mokim." So there's nothing that has no mokim. So obviously, even when a person feels completely bottled to someone, he still has a mokim. But that's not what he wants to say here. The point that he wants to say here is that you see from the negative also the positive. In other words, mokim means quality. And someone who's completely nullified, or loses himself, or loses any sense of quality or value, that's what means mokim. He has no tfisas mokim. That's the meaning of mokim, no quality. And then the point is that it's how you see yourself. It's not how the other sees you. This isn't about someone looking down at you. This is about physically. This is about you not feeling that you have any mokim here. You don't belong here, basically. It's almost like saying, I don't belong here. Okay, so the bottom line is, and this is what mokim means. The real meaning of space, in other words, is ma'ila, quality, it's state of being, its status. The value of everything. So it's like putting a value number on something that defines its space, not the actual space it occupies, physical space. It's according to the quality of the thing. Yeah. That's mokim means ma'ila. In other words, mokim means quality. And the space of everything, it's the value of everything. Is defined and determined by the quality of that thing. Now he goes on. Begashmius in the physical, even in physical space. He's qualifying, because he'll explain this a little more. Even in physical space, what is space? When you say something occupies space, it's also metayeres hadover. It's also defining the object. It's the parameters. It's the definition. The hagbolos is the limits, and the parameters of the thing. So when you say something is, let's say, 5 feet tall, or 4 inches wide, or occupies, the longitude, latitude, 24 longitude, 26. What are you saying? It's also not just. It's also describing the properties. Like he says, it's also describing the object. Like when you say the category of the inanimate, the mineral, or the category of the flora, as they call it.
That is its place.
1 second. Semeach, things that the world of vegetation. So when you say that, when you say something is in the world of the kingdom, the mineral kingdom, or the vegetable kingdom, that's its description of the thing, and that's its category, that's its parameters, its definition, its measurable. Yeah. V'hainu ma'ilosei, meaning that's its quality. She's saying even in the physical space is also defining quality to some extent. Actually, my example with the 5 feet, then that is not a good example, because that's describing its size. That's not. He says when he means mokum here, he means its category. That's what he's saying, category. So when you say something is in the world of daimim, in the world of tzameach, it means its quality as the quality of the mineral world, or ma'alos tzameach, the quality of the vegetable world. You're not describing the actual object. You're describing its space. Which category does it belong in? Which kingdom, which world does it belong in? So he's defining space now as a category. In other words, it's not the actual description of, let's say, a flower, or a description of a particular gem stone or something like that. It's a description of a category, which is what? It's maila, it's quality. We're not getting into how high that quality is, but its quality. Its quality is that it's mineral. That's its parameters, and its definition and its description. Now he's going like for example, this is general categories. The same thing is in detailed things. When you talk about the specific things, the description of something is a maila. What do we say when there's four shemis we had shem ha.
Two shem Torah, shem Pula, and shem Mushal.
We had shem etzem, shem ha Toyer, shem ha Pu'ula, shem ha Mushal. We had shem ha Pu'ula. But then there's the shem of the object itself. There's a name of something. You say something is a stone, for example. That's a name. Tayar is already describing what kind of stone it is. Pula is its function. Etzim is its core. Shem Etzim is the actual core. That's Shem Etzim. Okay, so let's see what he says. So anyway, saying Hatayar hu amayla. When you say something described, Tayar is a definition. Tayar is Shem Tayar is describing something. It's a description. Like you ever see, you buy a product. So here's a product description. So the product has a name, but the description describes what kind of product it is. Like for example, in the world of mineral, there are simple stones, and there are precious stones that are bright and precious stones that illuminate. Shakol hu daimim, all of them are in the world of mineral. Rak shmuchalokim b'mailosam. But they're distinguished in their quality. V'hu ateh shalahem, and that's their description. So you say a diamond stone is different than just saying that it's in the world of mineral. Say it's all in minerals. You could have someone say, "I'll give you a case of minerals." What does that mean? It can be simple stones. It can be a diamond. It can be other precious gems. So we see here that describing that even in the physical world, describing a category is also describing its description is also a mila, its quality. That's beprotis. That's the specifics in the world of them. Same thing. Similarly, also becholos in the general categories. Geder ademim, hainu milas ademim. When we say geder adem, the category of mineral means the quality of mineral. And we geder atzameach, milas atzameach. And we say the category of vegetation means the quality of vegetation. V'chein geder achai, the same thing, the category of the animal. Fauna. Flora, fauna. Actually, no, I think flora and fauna is mineral and vegetable. Sorry. Yeah. No?
Animal, vegetable.
Yeah?
Animal, vegetable, yeah.
Flora is for sure vegetable. And fauna is animal or fauna is stone? Is like the coral.
No?
Okay, maybe. Okay, whatever.
Check it out, I'm waiting for it.
That's fine. V'geder ma'al ma'alosh shel hadavar, and the category and quality of the thing, of the object, zeu mekayme. That is its space. So here too is not physical space. It's not like the mineral. When you say something in the world of mineral, you're not putting it in any physical place. You're defining its category. You're defining its quality. Hainu tfisose shenitfis l'davar ma, meaning that's its value. That it's shenitfis l'davar ma.
One is animal life.
Huh?
Animal life.
Fauna, yeah. Good. I thought so. So fauna. Shenitfis l'davar ma. It has it's precious. It's valuable. It has it has significance. Shenitfis l'davar ma. It's considered significant. L'davar ma. Shenitfis l'davar ma. How do you translate? It's significant. It has considered something of value. V'hu hametayirese, and that's what describes it. Raksha begashmi, now he's going to make the distinction. So now we've established that even in Gashmi, mokim can be ma'ila by the categories. Raksha begashmi sharet tfisuhu b'aksham mamish. However, in the physical world, when you say tfisa, something has value, that takes on physical mamish akshama, becomes tangibly, very tangible, literally tangible. The tefis mokim gashmi. and it takes on also physical space. The definition of mineral is a qualitative definition, but its manifestation is in a physical way. And also its description and its shape, hu begashmi, is also physical. It has length and width. That's what I said earlier, measurements. In truth, even in Gashmis, this is not its true space. Its quality and its categorization, that's its true space, as mentioned above. But nevertheless, it does manifest in a physical way. What the Rebbe Rashab, I believe, is adding here before we go to Ruchnis, he's trying to show, I think, besides just qualifying and explaining the idea, that even in Gashmias, if we really valued things, we'd value them by their quality, not by their quantity, not by their space. In other words, just because somebody comes in who's more powerful, with more arms, walks into a room, and is able to dominate over people who are more superior to him, that's simply because Gashmis in this world is a distortion. But in Gashmis also, you don't need Ruchnis even. Even in Gashmis, if people just recognize what their status was, we'd already have a better world. So he's saying here, in other words, that even in Gashmis, you also have the idea of quality. However, quality manifests in this world in quantity. That's the point. Mashenk and Ruchnias, he's going to say, it's not like that. Well, the Maila Baruchnias Be'elim Esalyenim, and above. And above here doesn't mean above in the sky, you look up. He means above here also in Mokim Maila. The Maila meaning in a more superior state.
Whenever it says Lamaila Baruchnias.
Yeah, in the Chanami, but especially here when you say Lamaila, clearly it doesn't mean that's the exact opposite of what he's teaching here. Baruch is Be'elim Esalyenim, in the higher worlds, which means again higher in quality. Like the angels and similar. There, their value is not manifest in any physical way. Rather, it's a value that is in a spiritual way, in their be'erkam u'malosam, in their value and in their worth, and their quality, their value and their quality. You've got to learn this slowly, because this is. But okay. Like it says elsewhere, that the distinction between angels. What separates them from one another, what separates them is not like by bodies, like by us, what separates us is physical space. There, what distinguishes them is their comprehension and the form of their service. So in other words, yeah. Well, this also will help us understand. For example, we speak about Elam Nasim Belibam. Inside of you, you have everything. Everything. Lifnei had Tzimtzum and Kav and Eir and Ak and Akudim, Vrudim, Bri Yitzirasiyah and Malachim and Neshamis. It's all inside of you. How's that? And the only difference is which level of Asaga and Aveda it is.
But inside doesn't mean inside your body.
Inside your presence. I know it's inside, just like inside your brain. You have ideas. It's not outside your brain. No, it is. It's inside, because it doesn't need to be Tefes Mokum, so it could be inside. Yes, it's inside others as well. Fine, but also inside of us. That's what it means. And look, and if you look at Elam Katan Za Adam, you are everything in that sense. Okay, so the distinction is that like the machna, the camp of Michal. Michal, just for the record, Michal is an angel, of course. Michal, the main three angels are Michal, Gavriel, Rafal. So Michal is usually the angel of Chesed. So we say machna Michal because every angel comes with a whole entourage. An entourage, or sometimes you say, what's the machna Michal? There's also
camp.
There's another one. A camp I said before. Machna Michal entourage. There's another word I wanted to use. Okay, Ba'ava. So machna Michal serves Ba'ava with love. Sheyesh b'zeh kuf pei elef machnas. There are 180,000 camps.
Who told us this? I'm back to my old question.
You think that Rebbe Rashab just made up a number?
No, I know. It's from the Zayar. It's
Yeah, this is probably Zohar or Medrash, maybe.
this number.
Yeah, for sure. You want me to look it up? I can look it up. It's for sure. I have no problem with your question, but something. But the whole Torah is based on sources. Nobody makes things up.
You must have missed that one part of the message.
This part is always the hardest for me to grasp. It's so abstract.
So we have these 180,000. What distinguishes these 180,000? Which means that they're separated and distinct by their form of comprehension and service. And that's their quality and their value. Or their value and their quality, however you want to define it. And that's their space. Okay. So we've established that space means quality. In physical, it manifests in physical. In spiritual, it just doesn't take on physical manifestation. So it just remains quality, basically. It's just quality levels. I mean, I don't mean in a minimal way. I mean, just without... No, you have to remember that the physical reality is the superimposed one. The way we live in this world, the way this world functions, that's not the way it works. It just works this way in the physical plane. It's the only plane where things work this way is physical time and space. And nevertheless, you have to say that the worlds of Bria Tzirasiyah,
There is some sort of element of
okay, well, you're going to say. Now he's going to the other side of things. Okay, one step at a time. Plot thickens. Nevertheless, obviously he's going to say it's spiritual space, measurements. In other words, he wants to bring out it's not just quality, purity. Quality itself, well, when you say Oifen Hasogi, you're right away saying, what means Oifen Hasogi? Explain to me that one form of comprehension is different than another form, so there has to be parameters.
There's a reason why it's called Malkum, in other words. Malkum.
Well, remember who said what Malkum is. Malkum starts with Maila. Malkum is not based on our definition.
We could have said there's a difference between maybe Maila Gashmi and Maila Rukni, but we decide that it's called Malkum.
Okay, well, listen, let's continue here. You have to say that even in the spiritual worlds, that also in the spiritual worlds, Malkum, Shanitvis, spiritual space is also a space that manifests in length and width. Ukamayim Razal, like Razal say, this I'm sure you don't need a source for. This is a Chagiga. By the way, I think it says a Chagiga, Kuf Pei Machmas. Same Chagiga. When it says in Gemara, you got no problem, by the way. You don't ask where the Gemara takes it from.
No, where's the Gemara taken from?
Oh, and what about Teresh
No, it was
B'Ksav?
handed down with Halacha Mishmusian. These numbers. Because
I understand, you're a Lamdan.
Yeah, but there's Lamed.
You know that every Shtikl Gemara is based on either Kabbalah.
Right? There's a way.
No, but they didn't come up with it. No way that there's no Seichel in it. Could have been Kuf Pei Aleph. I mean, there has to be, either they derive it from a pasuk and they learned it out from somewhere. Come on, but you know the process of learning.
That's right.
Or they will cobble it from their teachers, and there was a Kabbalah that they, in Chanami. You asked me about the Esses Sfiras, the same thing. I see. I have no problem with skepticism, but go all the way, even outside your comfort zone. Because if you want your complete skepticism, you have to start with Teresh B'Ksav. That is too much, right? Because there, you can get really punished. You're the Sainish. You're superstitious. One day they're going to be asking who was I saying this to, because the camera only sees me speaking. No names. This is a fictitious figure who plays devil's advocate.
When we finish the third book, we'll make an appearance.
Yeah, that's good. That's it. Then it will come and bow. At the end of the show.
Get our credits.
Supporting.
You never know. Listen. In a million years from now, Tuchat Charuv, Mashiach, and so on, someone will find on some type of, like in a bottle on a beach, a videotape, and they'll start putting together history. They'll say fossils. They're gonna wonder who's this Avram, who's this doctor.
Yeah.
And then, like it says, like actually, to me, when I read this, it's very comforting, because I've started understanding these Gemaras for the first time. When I hear Kuf Pei Machnas or Kuf Pei Elef Machnas, not best, and 400 years, you start thinking, what years? Travel 500 light years. What kind of years are these? So just without the Ruchnis, it's impossible to really understand. The Gemara becomes very weird, frankly. Or from earth to heaven to the sky, first Rakia is Mahalach Tovkuf Shana, is a journey of 500 years. Eve Kol Rakia, which is to travel through the thickness of every sky, heaven. Bein Kol Rakia also says 500. Basically, Shiva Rakim. There's 7 Rakim, 7 heavenly dimensions, 7 heavenly spheres.
Like 6,000 years it comes out towards the other.
500 times 7 is 35.
That's the width of the Rakia, so maybe.
So 500 times 14, okay, is 7,000. Yeah, but I don't know if it's year. Listen, let's see. It definitely doesn't mean physical years.
What's the speed here?
No, but
By the way, 500 light years is a lot faster than our years.
and
So
then 1,000 years of Mashiach, 6,000 years like this.
500 light years is no. If you say it's light years, for example,
Mahalach means literally walking.
walking or flying.
Mahalach.
Well, like a turtle or like a snail,
Like a
like a shirapache.
Like a
Oh, the Mahalach, Yud Beis Mil, yeah.
1,000 years of Mashiach. And then there's 1,000 years.
So 500, yeah.
And then it changes. So it's really 7,000.
Basically,
7,000 years.
So basically, if you lived 1,000 years like Mr. Sholach, you could make 2 Rakim. Is that what you're saying?
One
Rakia,
one
space.
But that's not sleeping. That's just walking all the time. So you got to calculate also.
No, it says that a person walks an average of what, 10...
Yud Beis Mil?
Esef pass a day, so it's not so much. With
Okay.
the car we could get there last
What's
time.
Yud Beis Mil then? What's the average Yud Beis Mil? Something else? Okay. Something about.
A meal is like a kilometer, right?
His base meal was the Machane Yisrael.
Yes.
Oh, maybe. Okay.
No, it's a kilometer.
How many parts in a meal?
Yeah.
4 meals in a parcel.
4 mil per parts. Okay, let's go on. Ragli Achayis connected Kulam. This is all the Gemara in Chagiga. And the Ragli Achayis, which is the legs of the Chayis, here we're talking about the Chayis Arcadish, these are the angels. Connected Kulam. Correspond to all of them. And Shukei HaChayis, which is the thighs of the Chayis. Basically, the Gemara is calculating all these levels and says that the Chayis HaKadosh, the angels, are more than the whole journey through all these heavens. I forgot what it says. Shikha Chayis also says connected Kulam. What's the end of the Gemara? I don't remember. So what do we have from this? Why is he bringing this Gemara? He's bringing here that you see clearly the parameters. They're very clear parameters here. It's not just quality, another quality, a higher quality.
Parameters and Ruchnis.
Right, exactly. And the angels and so on and so on. And even though all this is in spiritual levels, spiritual ideas, like it says elsewhere in the Inyan of Ragleihem. Regel Yeshara. This is a sugya in. Let me just remember where this is. Regel Yeshara. Regel Yeshara. It's in Veschanon.
Ragleihem is made out of the words Regel Yudke.
Yeah. But I'm just trying to think what the sugya is. It's in Veschanon. There's a whole maimer about it. I have to look it up. I remember now. But Regel Yeshara means a straight leg, but Tov Kuf Yud Hey. In other words, what does the Tov Kuf Shana mean? You say it's Kedagleihem Keneged Kul or Raglei. So it's Keneged the Tov Kuf Yud Kei. In other words, we're not talking about Tov Kuf in a physical sense. Spiritual. Tov Kuf Yud K is, I'm almost sure, what's Veschana Gematria? Veschana's Gematria, Tov Kuf 515. That's it, 515. Yeah, that's what I said, Veschana. Yeah.
Wow.
That's what it talks about it. Veschana, when Moshe, Tov Kuf Tezvav, that's 515. That's Tov Kuf Yud Hey. So there it talks about, I don't remember the whole connection there, he talks about his tefillis, how it reached, why 515? Because it reached that level in Ruchnius. So bottom line is, he's trying to say is that all this is Ruchnius. Mekom mokum tzarech leimer, she'er b'zeh gam ken tfisa begeshem. Oh, 1 second. Ooh. So in other words, he's saying a big chiddush here. No, that also has to have some manifestation in Gashmis. U'kamoi, like it says, b'malach b'shlish elam emid. It says a malach, and there's two opinions what this means. Does a malach is a third of the world, or the world is a third of a malach? There's two pirushim. Basically, it literally means malach b'shlish elam emid. An angel stands in the third of the world. So some type malach b'shlish elam emid, b'shlish meaning a malach is a third, the size of a malach. He brings both?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, okay. So we see from this that he manifests in some type of in the categories of this world, the structure of this world. It's a good raya because it says shlish elam. There, if you didn't say shlish elam, you could say mahalach here. The malach is above there. It's always ruchnis. But saying shlish elam means he's connecting it to our elam. Why can't you say it's ruchnis? Okay, let's read further. I don't want to just jump. However you'll interpret, ima pirush malach shlish ma'elam, or whether the taich means the meaning that the malach is a third of the world, or the interpretation that the world is a third of the malach. However you interpret it, we're comparing a malach, an angel, to the size of the world. V'chein movin, and it's also and the same is understood. M'masharom razal brachas dav daled. From the Gemara in Brachas dav daled, what does it say? B'chol ba'achas v'greviril b'shtayim. I believe there, the achas and shtayim, I think he's talking about the legs they have.
Jump.
It's also the
They
same.
jump.
Flying.
Tisa says, the next line. It says,
Okay.
Seder's council or something.
Yeah. The mechol one jump, or gavril b'shtayim and two, like two legs. V'hayin l'fisha elam teifus eizem mokim. L'gabe hamalachim. But the mere fact that you say machol ba'achas, you're using, in other words, metaphors, or physical metaphors of how we travel, means that the world has some mikokim compared to the angels. The angels have some relationship with the world. This is just, by the way, enhancing the interface. So it's not just completely separate worlds. We'll soon understand the explanation. That's why mechol is enough for him, one jump. The Gavril b'shtayim, and Gavril two. In other words, he's showing from this chazal that the malachim, even spiritual angels, which we said before are spiritual, still are defined and compared to measurements in this world. We still need to know what this means, but he's saying that he's bringing that there has to be some gashmis, there's some manifestation, some connection to physical parameters. We'll have to figure out what. This may help us understand technology.
And Chesed and Gebura, it makes sense, fits in perfectly. Gebura divides up and has two, and Chesed.
Ve'eliyahu sheyagufet chila b'gashmi medalad yisei the Shabbatitz. He's bringing. The Gemara contains Eliyahu, whose body was first a physical body, made up of dalad yisei, made up of, when we say something physical, it's made up of aish ruach ma'im ofer. That was clear. Eliyahu wasn't a physical body; he was not a spiritual entity. Shabbatitz. V'nepach l'ruchni, and he was transformed to a ruchni because he went up with gufei all the shemaim, all the side of shemaim. He did not die in the conventional sense and was buried and his body decomposed, or even if it didn't decompose, it was lying in the ground. He went up v'nepach l'ruchni. Sarich arba tisas. He needs four jumps. Tisa is more than a jump. Tisa is also a flight. They say when they say a flight, but it means a leap. Matos is a flight. Tisa.
Yeah.
Now, one second. If he needs 4, you know why? Because he wasn't a malach originally. He started from physical, so he needs 4. So you see clearly that we're identifying spiritual entities with physical expressions.
Is it connected to how many Yesodis they're made up of? He says Medal Yesodis, so you need
That may be. It's nice. That's what would be nice. And the other malachim are made up only of ruach and eish. Because it says offer, maim and offer are more.
One?
Well,
Bechol only one?
You only need one job.
Yeah, but
It may say somewhere like this. I'm not sure. I think even the Rambam in the beginning of Hilchos Seder Torah, he talks about the Galgalim, what's made out of all 4, and I think Malachim are made only of Eish or Mayim or Eish and
No, there's
Ruach.
more. Somebody continues over there that there's another one that needs 8 jumps. Malachim Mavis, whatever. So.
well, again.
The Mishals.
You remind me of the joke the guy said to the Malach HaMavis comes to God when he created him, and said to him, why you're causing me to be cursed by everybody that's going to die. He's always going to blame me. He says, don't worry, they're not going to blame you. They're going to blame a heart attack, a doctor, cancer.
By the way, talking physically, the rockets, they have steps,
Right, exactly.
First step, second step,
Stages.
stages, whatever.
The boost, yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Basically, to go from stratosphere to whatever.
This is like a Garata within Chassidus. I mean,
It's nice.
I got it though with Chassidus.
Okay, so here we go. That's now Eliyahu. V'zeu lefi she'malachim heim begeder mokim mitzad haguf shelehem. And this is because the angels are in the category of space due to their bodies. Al kena elam tefes mokim legabeim. That's why the world, meaning our world and its measurements and its parameters and its boundaries, tefes mokim legabeim. Tefes mokim is using. Have importance to them, significance to them. Okay, so one second. Okay, so what we've established here is that there is somewhere where Gashmis touches Ruchnis, basically. That even though Ruchnis, we define Mokim Ruchni, space is defined by quality. Even physical space, even physical categories are also their quality. This is, however, the physical realm. This is the spiritual realm. There is a place where they intersect, because in other words, there are levels like Malachim who have in some way some type of relationship to something that's physical. Didn't explain how or what, but clearly that's why they are measured, or the shlish, or the way they travel, in terms of our journeys. Meaning, in terms of physical, I guess, measurements of a journey. Since he didn't explain it, I don't want to explain it either. I have some thoughts to say about this from other Maimorim, but I want to see where he's going with this before going there. Because, for example, there's a question that's asked about Gan Eden. The Mittler Rebbe asked the question. Some Alter Rebbe asked, but the Mittler Rebbe elaborates. Where is Gan Eden today? We know Gan Eden was a physical place. There's no question about that, because the Torah says clearly, geographically, where it was.
Iraq.
Now you could say Gan Eden was Ruchnis, and then so they were in Ruchnis, but it's not. It was on earth in a certain place. It was geography. There's 4 rivers where they meet. So the question is asked: where is Gan Eden today?
There was no Gan Eden because people were not supposed to die.
So the Mittler Rebbe answers, based on the Alter Rebbe's Maimer, the Alter Rebbe answers that Gan Eden was Gashmis, Ruchnis Shebegashmis. So as long as Adam and Chava were also more spiritual, they were able to live there. And once they became more material by eating from the tree of knowledge, they no longer could be there, and no one on this earth can see it anymore because it's ethereal. But he says clearly it's a physical space that has a spiritual nature, and therefore it's like in between physical and spiritual, basically. He says very clearly that. Though understanding it, it's not that difficult to understand, because think of it this way. It's hard for us to imagine, but if we were more sensitive, we'd be able to pick up. Like, for example, we can't hear sounds that, let's say, dogs could hear even.
Or radio waves.
Yeah. We can't hear sounds. So if we were more sensitive, we'd be able to hear them. So the same thing could be with sight. With physical material eyes, you could only see certain things. You're not going to see a certain thing that is more ethereal. I once wrote a whole article about it, actually. The problem is...
donkey.
Now the question, however, is, so what happens? If you go now to the place where Gan Eden was, what would be? There's a whole kinds of discussions where Gan Eden actually was. I'm not talking about where we see it today. Can't see it. If you go by the four rivers, it's complicated because two of the rivers, Euphrates and the Tigris, meet. The other two rivers, not sure what they are. Chedekel and what was the other one?
Chedekel is Tigris.
Chedekel is Tigris, right? And Pros is the Euphrates. The other two are not clear what they are. So there are different opinions. The Ramban, there's a lot of opinions.
Pishon
and Gichin, right? Some actually say the Nile, but the Nile is elsewhere. So some say the Nile ran there. Yeah, there are kinds of different opinions. My little research, I discovered that it seems the consensus that it would probably be the lower tip of the southeastern Iraqi, where it meets the Persian Gulf.
Basra.
The Persian Gulf, where the water is, and I even found that it's very possible that it was right there by the edge. So it's very possible that when after Adam and Chava sinned, it could have been the water simply covered up that part of the land, which would explain the Ruchni Shebezeh. In other words, right now it's really submerged, and therefore water in general in Chassidus is Ruchnis. So in other words, it's no longer a land that we can live in. I'm not saying this is for sure the case, but possible. The Ramban brings that someone in India traveled, that in India they saw Gan Eden from a distance. They saw the flashing swords, fiery swords at the La Tamas La Pacha. But anyway, the point I wanted to just make is that so in explaining Ruchni Shebegashmi, you know the mashal that Mittler Rebbe gives?
The Northern Lights.
But this would be a little different area. The Mittler Rebbe gives a Meirzik mashal. He gives the mashal, he says, of sweetness of an apple. Sweetness of an apple is the Gashmis or Ruchnis. So you can taste it, but you can't see it, and you can't touch it. You cut open an apple, you're not going to find sweetness. Sweetness is a spiritual within physical. He says that's the example of Ruchni Shebegashmi. So I'm not saying that's the meaning here, because I don't want to speculate, I want to finish.
Speak about like the town over here?
We learned about this, yes, by Erz Ruach.
Oh, we learned about that the tam comes from the koyach.
From the mazel, the koyach tzemech, or the mazel, etc. Yeah, but that's correct. Look, at the end of the day, I think this is vital piece, because remember, the biggest challenge is going to be where does Gashmis meet Ruchnis? We're talking about heaven and earth, the interface. So where it meets Er HaGvul, Lifnei HaTzimtzum, we've learned it's going to meet Ak in the Er HaKlali, that this whole thing is coming to lead there. But here, clearly, what we found here is that there's some place where you use language. Now you could say, why can't you just say metaphor? That the Gemara is simply using a metaphor. Teira dibra teira b'lashon b'nei Adam. So a malach is not a third of the world, or the world is a third of a malach. It's using our term, but it means spiritual. But clearly the Rebbe Rashab, because it's using such tangible terms, that there must be some relationship also to the physical.
So when it says in terms like this, all that means...
No, there you wouldn't say that. No, there for sure you wouldn't say like he's saying here. Malachim you could say that. Malachim you could say that. Like if you said HaKadosh Baruch Hu's b'shli she'elam, you'd have a problem.
Right.
But Eini Hashem for sure means...
Hashem means Malchus, and Eini Hashem means this level, right? And,
well, listen, this is what we're discussing. We're going to have to review this. Look, there's no difference. There's a big difference, Malachim, let's say in Asiyah, than Malachim and Atzilus. Malachim and Atzilus, I'm sure, have no connection to Geshem. He's clearly talking about Malachim in the lowest level, Machayas HaKedesh, because he's speaking Rakia Rakia, and then the next level is the Chayas. So he's talking about angels that are on the low. Eliyahu Hanavi, who was a physical person who became an angel, who became a Neshama, Ruchni. So there's no question, as you travel upwards in time and space, you're going to come to a place where it's absolutely, totally spiritual. He's just saying, but his words were with this: and on the lowest level, it has some connection. Look, let's not jump the gun. We're going to have to elaborate on this.
So delicious.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go, guys.
Well, the Milam. Okay, so now he goes like this. So we establish now, after establishing that Mokim, that this world consists of time and space. Spiritual space is not manifest in physical form. It is based. Spiritual space is basically quality, state of being, status. Even physical space, he said, is also status, like Daimim Tzemeach. However, it manifests in physical. But even spiritual, Makom Mokim, that's what we're up to now, also has some relationship with physical parameters. What that means and how it understood, he didn't explain, but he just said it does have to have. And now he says, Vascholas Inyan Hamokim. It's an interesting line also. He says, Al Kena Elam Tefes Mokim Legabehem. He didn't say that they are bound by space and time in this world. It's Tefes Mokim by them. In other words, a Malach on the lowest level has to consider the time and space of the physical world. He has to reckon with it, basically. It's not just, a spiritual entity can jump wherever it can go. It has to go one step, 4 steps, a third. That's the key. So it's reckoning with it rather than...
Just know where to get to.
Yeah.
Rather than being confined by it?
Yeah.
He doesn't spell it out, but it looks, exactly. In other words, it's Fortnite Gashmis. You're not comparing. Like, for example, when the Malachim came to Avram Avinu, so he saw three they manifested in physical form. Looked like 3 nomads, right? 3 Arabs. They were traveling, they were walking, and Avram considered them to be humans. That means they ate and drank because of Holub ben Musa. They went by the customs of the land. So even though they don't need to eat and drink, they ate and drank, and they behaved that way until they revealed what they were. So you see clearly that they definitely had to have a relationship with Avram in a physical term. Not that Avram couldn't relate to spirituality, but there it was necessary for them to take on physical form. And Achnosis Archim, and he gave them tongue and mustard, which I did say is Gashmis, right?
We're Gashmis, we have to relate to spirituality, and they're spiritual, they have to relate to Gashmis.
Exactly right. I remember once the Rebbe in a Sikha, just as Derech Agav was speaking about later in the Vayetze, it says the Malachim went up and down the Sulam, the ladder. So the Rebbe says the question, the Kvotz Kasha, that what a child should ask, does an angel need a ladder to climb to heaven? Because if he needed a ladder, then when the 3 Malachim came to Avram Avinu, it would have been weird if they'd been carrying ladders with them. The Rebbe said, I remember he smiled and he said, well, if Avram said, drei Araber, mit leiters in the hand. I remember thinking at the time, why they could have maybe put away the ladders, but they'd have to get back.
And the other Arab was still
Right. Yeah. And I just remember I visualized when the Rebbe said it was very funny. He said, just they're thinking practically, like if they need the ladders, so then they would need it earlier. I remember what the Rebbe's answer was. Maybe the Meister with the Rishner, it's a Cholim. No, but that was about Elam v'Yevdim. No, not Lavdavke. I don't remember why. I think I'm not sure the Rebbe answered. It was a Kasha and Rashi. The Elam v'Yevdim, the Rishner didn't ask the question because it was a dream. When they asked him, he was always mechavan to Rashi's things. So he says, why don't you ask the question, first the angels go down, then they come up. So he says, that was but I don't know if a cholim is stuck in kasha, says Evi Afatayv. But I don't know if you could say the same thing. A cholim says a ladder. It's a good question why they needed a ladder. The ladder ultimately is definitely a mashal for davening and for Sulam, the Sinai, etc., etc. Anyway, the point is, there's the story with that Rebbe, one of these Rebbes that was able to see, you came to him, he could tell you wherever, anything you lost. Maybe. So as a skeptic and wondered, people would come to him, they'd go and they'd say they lost this, they lost that, they lost... And he would a few minutes later they'd go out and they'd come back and he told them where it is. So one guy decided to hide, as I'm wanted to find out, the skeptic, what's going on. So he hid in the room and see what is the Chayza doing to find out. Why does it take him a few minutes? Why doesn't he just tell them? What's his trick? So when they went out, he was hiding and he sees the Chayza goes up on a chair and does like this. And then goes down and he comes in, he tells them where it is. So the guy jumped out, he says, I don't understand. No manushach. If you could see, what do you need to get up on the chair? And what's getting up on the chair help? Nobody can do. She said, or maybe he did it for him.
Because he saw the guy coming. Is there?
Yeah, but the point is that I guess you have the Baal Shem Tov that knocked on the window and walked away when he needed something. So it said for him that was Barach B'chol Asher Tasa. You could say that there is that element is the any of a heker. The Rebbe brings about Erev, right? You need the heker. You need something that's like the Rebbe would bring about Nevuah. Whenever he would give mashke, he would say by Nevuah. It says in Drasha Saran that the Nevi'im would always hold on to something, a cup or a chair or something, because you needed the Nevuah to manifest.
A handkerchief.
Yeah. So maybe I'm not. No, this is definitely a fascinating subject. Anyway, okay. So now he goes like this. So we have Tefes Mokim legabeim. V'ascholas inyan hamokim hu mebchinas malchus. The Rebbe Rashab is now saying, where does Mokim begin? Clearly, he means Mokim Ruchni. Where does the concept of space begin? Mebchinas malchus. Mebchinas malchus nesav mebchinas hamokim bebiyah. That from malchus, mebchinas malchus, is created the Mokim, the space of biyah, meaning the parameters of biyah. Well, the Milo B'chinas HaMalchus Lo Yesh B'chinas HaMokim. And above Malchus, okay, if you think Mokim Ruchni was hard to figure out, now we're going to figure out what is beyond spiritual space.
Didn't we mention that like last chapter, 2 chapters ago?
Yeah, he's mentioned more than once. Higher than Malchus, there's no Mokim. For sure, we've mentioned it. We mentioned it by places where we spoke about Chachma Bina and Midas and so on. Let's see. I don't want to say. You know what he's saying?
Let's read the book.
Yeah. There we go. Oh, I'm glad you're saying that. There's no place. No. There's no level of hamokim. And nevertheless, there's mokim space also. Rak shasham zeu rak b'maylo madrega. Lo be'ezet tfisa begeder mokim chumri chaz v'shalom. Man alive, chaz v'shalom. Okay, hold on. Ich verstehe es nicht. But it's gesagt mit Gef Lenin and Sefer. So let's read it. So in Atzilus, there you have to say it's only quality. Remember we spoke about completely quality. It's only quality and status. Not in any tfisa, not in any manifestation in the category of, he says here chumri, could I have to say crass space. God forbid. He doesn't say gashmi, doesn't say he says chumri, which is interesting. Like he jumps to the extreme.
Only Malchus.
But he says Chosach Chaz V'Shalom, meaning to say you can't say such space. Why can't you say such space? God forbid, because you have to say godliness is involved. Okay. That's where we learned this. Like the Maila of Chachma Bina. I'm sorry, the Maila. Chachma Bina, its quality, that's its space. If you remember, there was a whole Hemshech of Mamorim in the 30s. Chapters 30 and 1 and 30, those chapters, where he spoke about what defines, if you remember, after he finished with the 10 hidden spheres, so he went to the Kav that defines the structure. So he said, what defines high, above and below? So he said, first he started that defines what's Ribuy Miyut, abundance of energy and diminished energy. Then he spoke about closeness, Kiruv and Richel, closeness to the source. But then he spoke about Maila. That Chachma Bina is not just diminished Chachma, they each have their quality that as defined by God. Not defined by that's their space. That's what he's saying here. That the quality of Chachma Bina is completely defined by its quality, by the space of Chachma Bina rather. Zeh Mekema. My losam, their quality, that's their space. And with that they're higher than Zah. They're not higher, like we said, Makaris Mekeme. They're superior in quality, superior in value, and that's what makes them higher than Zah. And the same thing, the advantage, the Maila, the quality of Chesed over Gvura, Zeh Mekeme. That's its space. Which means in the Kalim, the containers of the 10 spheres, because higher than Kalim, as we learned, the Eidos, before they come in containers, are just archetypes. They don't even have any type of, you can't even call them qualities yet. They're still so amorphous. But in the 10, this Kalim of Esesriz, we learned this very, very specifically earlier. In the Kalim of Esesriz, that's where Nikr, he says, not that it's created. It's already in the energy, but there it's hidden. It becomes obvious the quality and the status of each individual sphere, and that's its space. So space in Atzilus is the quality of the level and that's the kelim of the Esser Sfiros. And where does Mokim begin starting to have some relationship with Gashmis? Malchus. That's what he's saying here. From Malchus. From that comes into Biyah. What that means, he has not explained. But he's saying it. So let's just, we know that. So don't jump the gun. We still need Havana in this. What this means exactly. In other words, what kind of space is there in Biyah? And what is there in Yitzira? And Bri, Yitzira, Siya? And how is that different? But clearly, it's starting to have relationship with the physical. In other words, you could learn pshat that everything is spiritual, and in Elam Hazeh Gashmi V'Achumri, God adds the last package. He adds the last layer as a physical layer. Here, it's obvious that it actually evolves. As it goes downward, it gets more relationship with the physical time and space as we know it. But what that means, we shall still have to understand. Very interesting. Okay. Yeah, maybe we should stop here. Because now he's going into Zman.
We're getting to a new level.
Okay, I see he's not explaining this Mokum thing. Okay, we're going to have to do this explaining. Are you sure? Does anyone peek a little later? Does it explain it more?
I'm sure.
I didn't see it.
Okay, if not, I'm going to have to explain. Okay, there are places that explain it. This is going to be a nice, interesting exercise.
Wow.
But clearly, there's what to think about. Look, the point is no question. Remember, the point, the bottom line is the next chapter.
Yeah.
The point is definitely going to be the Chassidus trains us to think less material, more spiritual, less physical, more ethereal, more sublime. And this is an exercise in that effort. Okay, so we stop here on page 339, second part of section of chapter 168.